This is Ag Matters PM from the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network, brought to you by the Iowa Soybean Association, your daily recap of the information that affects Iowa's farmers, producers, and consumers, right here in the heart of the heartland. With reports from our award-winning broadcast team of Dustin Hoffman and Riley Smith. Now, from the IARN studios in Des Moines, here's Dustin Hoffman.
Well, good day, everybody, and welcome to Ag Matters PM from the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network. I'm Dustin Hoffman. It is Wednesday, May the 4th, 2022. May the 4th be with you. This is Star Wars Day. Coming up in today's episode, Riley Smith visits with the folks from Wyffels Hybrids as we look at planting delays and whether or not Iowa farmers should be getting worried. I also talked with Iowa 3rd District Congresswoman Cindy Axne as she was in Perry this morning, along with USDA Rural Development State Director Theresa Greenfield, talking about some new plans that Cindy Axne has. We'll find out more about those, and we'll also have a check of your ag weather outlook. But first, let's look at the markets. It's time now for the Ag Matters PM Closing Market Summary, your source for market analysis and settlement prices from the day's trade in Chicago, courtesy of the folks at agmarket.net. Well, we've come to the end of the trading day on Wednesday, and we're going to turn our attention to how the market's finished up. And for that, we're going to talk to Jim McCormick of agmarket.net. Jim, how are things going today?
Well, it was a very volatile day today, but overall, it was you got to call it a pretty positive day, definitely led by those strength in the wheat market.
All right, Jim, so what did we see in those gray markets today?
Well, the wheat in general was 25 to 30 higher across the board. And what was driving the wheat right now was a story that came out early this morning that India is debating on if it's going to or halt the export of wheat out of the country. Now, India is the 8th largest supplier of wheat in the world right now. And a lot of the world was hoping and essentially assuming that they would be able to offset some of the losses that we're seeing in the Ukraine, or lost production potentially, as well as export capacity due to the war. Because India has been on a trend of having record crops about 6-7 years in a row. Well, they've had extreme heat right now, Dustin. There's talk now that crop could be down to 108. There's a few analysts out there have it down there below 100 million metric tons. If it would fall that low, they are going to essentially try to keep wheat at home to protect their domestic pricing, and that will be at the expense of the world. That potentially will drive demand back to the United States, hence the strength in the wheat market. Beans continue to find some strength today on a higher bean oil market as the world veg oil market continues its run up due to the tightening of the supply. And corn market was more of a two-sided trade.
Now, we talked this morning on the podcast about this with India, and obviously with us being a big question mark for what this year is going to look like. Brazil has a lot of question marks. Malaysia put palm oil restrictions on. India contemplating wheat. Is this something that we might see happening, with food and grains and commodities? Everybody kind of holding on to what they have?
Unfortunately, I think that is the trend we're going in right now. I mean, you are seeing a lot of protectionist activities around the world as people are trying to insulate their public from these higher energy and food prices right now. Now, I don't think you'll see that in the United States. The reality is the U.S., we have an excess supply to sell, which is, it's good for us, but we are seeing that higher pricing as certain, suppliers come off the market, i.e. that, Indonesia and the palm oil driving the U.S. bean oil prices up. Like I said, what's going on potentially here in India driving our wheat prices up. So this is a problem we're going to deal with. It's the overarching theme right now. What's going on in the world at this point in time is you still have too much money chasing too few of goods, the kind of the classic definition of inflation. And then you throw in some production problems around the world, not just this year, but last year and the last couple of years. The world supplies are tightening up as we speak. And coming into our harvest season for the wheat, we'll see the winter wheat crop in parts of Kansas is definitely, in Oklahoma, and not to mention Texas, is definitely under stress. So we're worried about that size of the crop. And then you look at our grain facility, the corn situation we're looking at right now. We are not off to the fastest planting pace. So that's got people questioning, is trend yield even possible for the U.S. corn market?
And of course, if it isn't food, it's fuel as well. Obviously, the two most essential things we need to operate. And we're seeing, oil was going up again. We've seen prices back at the pumps are going back up again. We talked this morning also about the EU, and there could be more cramping on the oil supply there as well.
No doubt about it. If you're an energy user, and everyone is in agriculture, it is going higher price. Diesel is just screaming right now. The good news is, I guess you could say the margins are there. Essentially what's going on, the energy markets are saying, hey, quit producing gas, produce more diesel. There's really a tight supply in the East Coast. That's obviously driving up the cost of everything that gets transported by diesel. And that, just adds to the inflationary argument of the market. I like to watch the energy market, specifically the crude oil market, as an overall flow of money into the commodity sector. I believe as the energy sector goes, so goes most of the commodities, as pretty much we use crude or some kind of component of crude in almost everything we do. So that's what's going on. So today we kind of have a two-prong effect today on the inflationary argument. You had higher food prices due to what could happen in India, and then you also have the EU trying to scale back from purchasing the Russian crude oil. And then on top of it, OPEC saying that's fine, but don't expect us to update or increase our production capacity because we're at total capacity. So the world right now is in a very tough situation. When supplies are tight, really the only thing the market can do is try to drive prices high enough to essentially ration demand. But that gets very, very hard to do, Dustin. As we know, you need food to survive. You need energy to go to work and move stuff around. So I think we're kind of caught in a cycle at this point that just, unfortunately, says higher prices.
Now, how did the livestock markets fare, cattle and hogs today?
Overall, they, livestock, the live cattle, they traded relatively sideways most of the session. What's going on there? They're waiting for the Fed numbers to come out. The Fed came out. They raised interest rates about 0.5 point as anticipated, and they're all going to start powering down their book here in June. But in general, they held in there. The hog market had the nicest rebound. It was really oversold technically, RSI, stochastics, however you want to look at it. So we did get a nice bounce over that, also off of the 200-day moving average. We haven't broken out of resistance yet, but it was a nice rebound in the hogs. We will need to keep an eye on the U.S. dollar. A weakening of the U.S. dollar would help the hogs because we really need but Mexico to come in and continue to buy our hogs. They've been the big purchaser recently with China backing away due to COVID. So that's something we need to keep an eye on.
All right. Well, a lot of outside forces at play, a lot of great information. And Jim, if anybody out there wants to, talk some marketing strategies with agmarket.net, what's the best way for them to get in touch with you all?
You can go to our website, agmarket.net, to download or sign up for our research. You can reach me directly at 815-665-0461 or reach any of the Ag Market team members at 844-424-6758.
All right. Well, Jim, thanks so much. And we look forward to talking to you again next week.
Thank you for having me on.
That again was Jim McCormick of agmarket.net here on the Ag Market Recap. Let's go ahead and take a look at how the market's closed, courtesy of the folks at Bar Chart. July corn was up 1 1/4 at $7.94 1/4. December new crop up a penny at $7.36 1/4. July beans up a dime at $16.40 1/2. November up 8 1/4. That was at $14.86 1/2. Soy meal was down $5.70 at $4.1820. Soy oil up $2.15 at $82.43. Chicago wheat up 31 cents at $10.76 1/2. Minneapolis up 21 3/4 at $11.77 1/4. Kansas wheat up 30 1/2 at $11.23 1/4. Oats were up 6 1/4 at $6.78 3/4. On the livestock side, live cattle for August 25 cents lower at $137.07. August feeders down 7 at $176.20. June lean hogs up $2.90 at $105.10. Pork cutouts up $3.05 at $112.05. Class 3 milk up 46 cents at $24.39. And that's been our Ag Market Recap here for you on your Wednesday. We're going to take a short break and hear from our sponsor, the Iowa Soybean Association and the Soy Checkoff. When we come back, Riley Smith talks with the folks from Wyffels Hybrids, and we talk about the conditions of planting progress right now, and should you be worried here in Iowa? This is Ag Matters PM.
Iowa Soybean Association is driven to deliver for Iowa's 40,000 soybean farmers. We're proud to provide objective agronomic research, a helping hand with soil and water stewardship, and timely industry news powered by the Soybean Checkoff. Learn more at iasoybeans.com.
Welcome back to AMPM from the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network. I'm Dustin Huffman. Well, the rains have been falling across Iowa, and though they are much needed, they are slowing us down for getting the planters rolling. Well, should you be worried yet? Riley Smith heard from the folks at Wyffels Hybrids who talk about the conditions in Iowa and whether or not farmers should be pushing that panic button.
Thanks, Dustin. Well, we are all well aware that planting is off to a slow start in Iowa as the rain just keeps on pouring. However, how concerned do we need to be right now? For that, we go to Dr. Brent Tharp of the Wyffels Agronomy team. He provides a deeper dive into the correlation between planting dates and final yield.
Today I want to discuss a topic that's probably on the front of a lot of people's minds, a planting date. Unfortunately, Mother Nature isn't cooperating with us in many areas, and we've had a lot of rainfall. And as I stand here on Friday, I think it's April 29th, we're going to be, it looks like rain is in the near-term forecast, and it might keep us out of the fields a little bit longer. But we need to exhibit patience, and I wanted to take some time to talk about planting date and really how important is it. When we talk about planting date, we often talk about trials such as the universities do, to where they do planting date trials where they'll plant within the same year at different dates, and we fit a line to that, and we can look at how the planting date influences the yield potential for those years. And planting date trials do show us that even if we get into May 15th, we're still at 95% of the yield potential for that year. And even if we get out into May 20th, we're still at 92% of yield potential for that particular year. But as the rain was falling, you know, I wanted to spend some time and do a little bit of a deeper dive or take a different look into this subject. And I wanted to see, how does planting date, or is there a relationship of planting date and where our final yields fall out for that year or that absolute year, and represented by trendline yields. So if we look at trendline yields, this is the 50-year yield trend line for the United States. You can see corn yields keep growing year after year, and this is a good thing. It can be attributed to a lot. The main driver of this is genetic improvement and plant breeding. So those guys are doing a good job in the research departments in the seed industry, because we are getting genetic gain. But the other thing you can see when you look at a trend line yield is that you have years to where you're above the trend line, and then you have years to where you're below the trend line. And I wanted to see, is there a relationship of planting date to where yield, or the yield is above or below the trend line. So I went to work and looked at some USDA statistics here, and for different states I looked at the 50% corn planting date, when we achieved that from 1997 to 2021 for this 25-year period. And then I'll plot that against the corn yield for the state, and how the planting date related or correlated to the final yield, whether it be above or below trend line. So if we look at this, theoretically, if you look and you think if earlier planting dates produce more yield, then we should get a graph that looks something like this, to where in our earlier planting dates we would have above trend line yields, and then our later planting dates we would have below trend line yields. And this is what it would theoretically look like if earlier planting dates, or planting date was kind of the end-all, be-all driver for final corn yield. But spoiler alert, before you take a Snapchat of this and send it out there, this isn't how the data looked. The data for Iowa looks like this. And in fact, this is pretty much a scattergram. There's no relationship, no strong correlation or relationship of planting date to final yield. In fact, if I look at this data, you can see that there are different events that actually, in-season events that affect yield more than planting date. One being the 2020 derecho, knocked our yields down. Even though it was a good planting date here at the end of April, still had below trend line yields. 2012, we got the crop in the ground in pretty good timely fashion, but again, the drought took its toll. And you could go on and on, look at your high yielding years, your low yielding years, and you can tell a story here. But the point is that planting date isn't a big driver of where we finally end up in yield. So if I look at Iowa, and you might be able to say, well, look at where we get our biggest above trend line yields. So 5% and above, again, that's a planting window that's the end of April, there to the first part of May. But I'll also say that that's when we generally get the corn crop in the ground. That's where the data sits. And there's about as many chances that we'll get a below trend line yield than above trend line yield, meaning that planting date isn't the driver. In fact, we can get out here into some of the later planting dates and in fact still get above trend line yields, which we did here recently in 2018 and 2019. So, planting date, it's important. I don't want to underestimate it, but it isn't the driver where we finally finish up for final yield. So I hope I haven't confused you too much with this analysis that I did looking at planting date and how it affected trend line yield. But I just do want to wrap this up with some final thoughts. As the rain is forecasted to fall here in the first week of May, I know we're really going to start getting antsy, especially in areas that haven't really got a good start. We still just need to have patience, and we still have time. And we do not want to push the conditions. We want to plan into ideal conditions. I always say I'd rather plan into ideal conditions in the middle of May than mudding things in at the end of April or at the very first of May. We're better off planning into those ideal conditions, because if we do push it and you start mudding things in, well, that's not going to set us up very well to where if the rest of the year turns off a little dry and a little stressful, it's good to have those nodal roots established and have good root growth, which if we mud things in, it will not do that, and we'll pay the consequences if we have a stressful end of the season. So, and finally, we need to stick to our original plan still. I know there's some talk out there, been getting some questions on, boy, I need to switch out my full season hybrids. No, we need to stick to our plans. This corn plant has a great ability to adapt to the environment it's put in, and it will adapt to the later planting dates. So I would say stick with your plan. Don't start thinking about switching out your fuller season hybrids in that very end of May timeframe, and hopefully we don't have to be making those decisions. And Mother Nature gives us a window here really soon.
So as you can see, there are many other factors that come into play throughout the growing season, beyond just the planting date, that contribute to the overall yield we'll see in the fall. For the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network, I'm Riley Smith.
Thanks, Riley. Now let's take a look at that ag weather outlook. Well, the sun pushed its way through a lot of that cloud cover today, but let's face it, not even the dual sons of Tatooine could get through some of that cloud cover today. But don't expect that sunshine to hang around for long. Let's see what the National Weather Service has in store. Well, we all got to see some sunshine throughout the day, but check local listings as to how much. We saw highs today, 58 to 62, but those showers are going to start building into the south and west, and tonight we're going to see those clouds start to roll back in, and rain will start to become more widespread after midnight, and we'll see lows in the low 40s to around 50 degrees. And tomorrow, rain becomes more likely, and it looks like it's going to hang around for a few days, and we'll see a high tomorrow in the mid to upper 50s. Taking a look at the affiliate weather map for tomorrow, Cherokee will see showers in 54, Shenandoah showers in 50, Des Moines and Waterloo both expecting to see showers and 56, Albia showers and 57, and Clinton will be the hot spot tomorrow on our affiliate map. They'll see showers in 59 degrees. For more detailed forecasts in your area, tune to your local Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network affiliate. And that's been a check of your ag weather outlook. When we come back after this short break, I will be talking with Iowa Congresswoman Cindy Axne and USDA Rural Development State Director for Iowa, Theresa Greenfield, as they were in Perry this morning to talk about some new initiatives. This is Ag Matters PM.
As we approach planting season, make sure you stay safe and share the road with your local farmers. Slow-moving tractors with large planters occupy a lot of space on the road, so stay patient and follow at a distance of around 50 feet. You should never, ever try to pass them at a bridge, intersection, hill, or curve. It's far better than putting yourself or someone else at risk. So please, stay safe and remember to tip your hat to your local farmer this planting season. This message was brought to you by your friends at the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network.
Welcome back to AMPM from the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network. I'm Dustin Huffman. Well, this morning I was in Perry as Iowa Congresswoman Cindy Axne of the 3rd District was there unveiling her new rural development plans, and she was also there with USDA Rural Development State Director Theresa Greenfield. The Congresswoman, first of all, tells us about her new initiative.
Goes everywhere from housing to healthcare to support for our police and fire departments to making sure that we invest in broadband, lower the price at the pumps through things like the biodiesel tax extender and my build out of infrastructure for ethanol around the country. So this plan really is about helping rural America prosper. And then the cherry on the ice cream is the fact that we're going to set up an Office of Rural Prosperity within the White House to literally put the voices of rural Iowans and other rural Americans in the halls of the White House where the decisions are being made. And the objective really is to make sure that rural voices are being brought up. We are the ones that need to make sure that the issues that impact us here in the Midwest are heard. And this 11-point agenda is going to help us with that. It's going to help towns prosper. It's going to hopefully help bring more people here. It's going to help keep our young people here in Iowa by being the towns that, you know, they want to continue to stay in and bring more people here to Iowa as well.
You know, and one thing you did hear from the townspeople here in Perry today, and they're talking about the fact that one of the biggest concerns we heard was employees and housing for them, because you could have 300 employees that you could fill jobs for, but you need places for them to live, and Des Moines is, you know, 30 plus miles away, not an ideal commute.
That's right. So there's a couple of pieces in there that help with housing. One is through the USDA, well, a couple of them. One that makes opportunities within the USDA more flexible for housing for people who have been displaced. What I don't want to see are things like what happened in Pacific Junction with the flooding, and they lost hundreds of people due to the fact that they couldn't get back in their houses and nobody will rebuild there. And so that community is really struggling to get ahead. We need to be able to move displaced people in a way that they can still stay within that community and have more options to do that. There's also pieces in there to address affordable housing for our seniors in rural communities and ensure that they can continue to have a good roof over their head. I've got opportunities for volunteer firefighters, which is most of our rural communities are filled with volunteer firefighters, to make sure that they can have access to affordable housing like other firefighters can that are, you know, I guess full-time, quote unquote, on the job. So there's three pieces in there that will really help with housing in our rural communities, but I'm going to keep working on that as well, because every time I turn around, those are the issues I'm hearing: childcare and affordable housing and housing in general.
And of course, you know, we've talked a lot about rural broadband and things like that. Obviously, that's something that's going to attract people here too, if they can have that same connectivity when they're out here living and working in these rural communities. But we also hear from townspeople that some of these projects, because of supply chain issues, they're getting delayed and they're up against some deadlines. How do we make that work with some of those dollars they've already gotten but are now in jeopardy because of timelines?
Well, it was great to be out here and to hear that, and that's why I love coming out and visiting with the folks in this district, because, you know, we can put policy in place, but life happens, right? So we're having supply chain disruptions. That is going to increase costs, and unfortunately it means some of the vendors that might be applying to do this work, you know, wanting to get the contracts, could be also raising their prices. And so this is a good time for me to be able to go back to DC and talk about this. We're working on the budget right now. We want to make sure that those broadband funds get to the outcome that, you know, that we're supposed to, which is connectivity to everybody. And if we're now going to be in a place where we're going to have to shore that up a little bit, I think we'll have to look to the budget, help USDA maybe, also work with state government, figure out how state and federal can better combine to ensure that we get the best pricing for our communities. I think if we work together, we're going to actually have more success than just the federal government saying, here's our parameters around a contract, or the state government saying that as well. If we work together, it's going to put a little bit more pressure on folks to come in with right pricing as much as they possibly can. But at the same time, I'm working on a lot of those supply chain issues to make sure that we're reducing those costs, whether it's our Ocean Shipping Reform Act, that's part of the Competes Act that we're going to get signed into law, whether it's getting those truckers on the road that we've been successful at and will continue to do so. And certainly the biggest thing is making sure that we produce goods here in America. And that is one of the key parts of the Competes agenda that's going to be passed through signed into law. It's already passed through the House and the version in the Senate. So we're working on all those pieces together. It's just that so much is happening right now. We're going to have to figure out a way to address it. And I'm going to take that information back and see what we can do.
Now, is there also a way, getting back to the housing and everything in general, we're talking about expansion. Obviously, there are businesses here not run by multi-million-dollar, you know, corporations that are, you know, construction workers, plumbers, things like that. Is there a way to maybe get it so some of these local companies are also part of the development, so help bring in dollars for them as well, not just bring in developers from other places?
Absolutely. I mean, that's one of the most important things we're looking for in this bill. You know, first and foremost, you have to be able to provide the right services to the people in the community, meaning you've got to have at least one opportunity for a $30 and under per month that's high-speed connectivity. So we're really looking at the end user on making sure that happens, but at the same time, we're ensuring that folks follow Davis-Bacon so that we get prevailing wages, that we hire locally as much as possible, hire within the state if we can't hire locally, but that is something that's built into the policy itself because we want to provide jobs to the people right here in Iowa.
As I said, USDA Rural Development State Director Theresa Greenfield was also on hand, and she talks about how these plans can help her office do more for rural America.
We are so excited that members of Congress support rural development and support agriculture, and Representative Axne and others have been great partners there. You know, what we do is loans and grants and loan guarantees to rural communities like Perry, and we've done a number of projects here in Dallas County and within Perry. And so I appreciated the invitation to join her today and get a chance to brag a little bit about USDA rural development.
And of course, rural development, that's covering, water, infrastructure, housing projects, stuff. Because we heard today from the people in Perry, they've got jobs to fill, but there's nowhere for the people to go.
Well, that's right. That's right. We have 50 programs, and we invest in community facilities, fire stations, ambulances, hospitals, and so much more. We invest in our water and wastewater infrastructure, new wells like they've done down in the city of Adel, just south of here. We invest in the business community with our B&I program, our REAP program. We invest in energy efficiency, and we invest in housing. And so, again, 50 programs, 10 offices around the state. I just encourage people to reach out to us and give us a chance to partner with you on your priorities.
What are you seeing right now as kind of like the big push that from some of these rural communities right now? Is it water infrastructure? What is it that's really driving them right now?
Well, rural communities are fired up about the bipartisan infrastructure law. Just a little over $5 billion is coming into Iowa to help with roads and bridges, water treatment systems, broadband, and so much more. And so they are talking about how they access those funds, how they prioritize their projects, because those are the kind of projects, sometimes they're not sexy, right? But they're the kind of projects that make a difference and make a community like Perry and communities like this across the state viable and strong.
What kind of things can be done? I know we heard from some of these people that they're working on these improvement projects, but obviously supply chain issues are slowing things down. They might be running up against some deadlines for funding. Is there ways for them to work with you guys? Because obviously it's beyond anybody's control, and it may take 6 months to get something where it used to only take 2 weeks.
Right. One of the best parts about coming out to events like this is you get to hear from local residents on the ground about the concerns, where the rubber hits the road for them. And so those are the kinds of concerns I'll take back to my leadership and have a conversation about what's happening on the ground when it comes to, as I mentioned today, supply chain and costs. And so that's what we can do about it, is listen, take that feedback, and go back and talk to USDA leadership about how we can support these projects.
Now, is there any work being done to, when we have like these expansion projects, obviously you've got contractors in town, rural businesses, plumbers, electricians. Is there a push to make sure that these local projects that are happening, let's say in Perry, go to people who are plumbers, electricians, and stuff in Perry so they can get that job to help vitalize that community as well?
Well, one of the big things that the Biden administration has done, and again, I was appointed by President Biden to be the state director for USDA rural development here in Iowa, is our Buy America, Build America plan. And so they will be prioritizing within USDA rural development projects those products that are local, that are made here in America, that are made here in Perry. And so I think we'll start to see some of those improvements and changes and focuses on our American builders and contractors and manufacturers in the very near future.
All right, well, thank you so much. Again, if people want more information, cities want more information, where do they go to get the ball rolling on what USDA rural development can do to help?
USDA.gov. Search for rural development, get online, and look for me, Theresa Greenfield.
That again was Iowa 3rd District Congresswoman Cindy Axne and USDA Rural Development State Director Theresa Greenfield. And that's it for today's episode of Ag Matters PM. You can find all of our content online at iowaagnet.com. You can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, and also find our video content and past episodes of AMPM on our YouTube channel. You can also subscribe to our free twice daily market podcasts on Amazon, Apple, Google, Spotify, and Podbean. From the IARN studios in Des Moines, I'm Dustin Huffman. For Riley Smith, we thank you for watching. This has been Ag Matters PM.